All right, well, welcome everyone. Why don't we get started? Um, so I'd like to welcome everyone today. We're going to be talking about um, different aspects of COVID that are a little bit less about sort of the statistics and diagnostics and treatments, and and much more about reintegrating, what I'm calling coming out of shelter, um, and finding what I'm calling the middle path towards how do we reintegrate in society, how do we come out of shelter in a way that's not just like how we used to, but in a new version of how we interact in the world, sort of a modified version. And so that's really, and then we're going to move into do a meditation. We're blessed to have Tarika Lovegarden here with us today, who's a meditation instructor and has beautiful courses. She's teaching one at Stanford right now, as well as has an app and other features. So we thought we'd allow you guys to experience some of that today as well. So the intention is to really be a bit more about sort of the next phase, and a bit about really the core of this conversation lies in our own emotions and how we're feeling. And a lot of it's been, for a lot of us, I know for me, there's been a lot of adrenaline sort of carrying us through this time. And now we have to realize, okay, this isn't a 2-month, 3-month thing. This is a 2-year thing. And so how do we pace ourselves, and how do we start to become a bit more aware of what our internal narrative is, and how do we walk through in a mindful way in these interactions with people at work, in strangers in the grocery store, etc. So welcome. So today I don't have any slides this time, which is new for me. So I'll enjoy the conversation that we get to all have together. If people have questions, please put questions up as we go through the Q&A, and we'll answer those in real time. So to get started, I just want to frame where we're at, which is, clearly emotions are running high around now. They tend to fall on two extremes. They tend to be around, so many of us are very fearful and hypervigilant, sort of one side of managing where we're at. Very fearful of becoming sick, and therefore very hypervigilant around protecting ourselves from that, either ourselves or our loved ones that we're responsible for, that we're in relationship with. And then the other side are people that are very angry, and we're seeing people, with armed protest, and that as it relates to COVID. But underlying all of it is fear. And if we give that some thought, what is the fear about? Even the angry folks standing with their assault rifle in front of a tattoo shop are fearful. And what are they fearful of? On one hand, it's financial ruin, right? It's not being able to have an income. It's going bankrupt. It's losing your job, or losing, going out of business. And so there's a deep fear there. And on the other side of this conversation is the deep fear of becoming sick and or dying. So there's underlying all of it really in my as you sort of deepen your sort of awareness around this, is fear. So, and they're coming from the similar place. So that we have in common. So there is a common theme when we're seeing someone before us that's yelling at us for wearing a mask. I was bike riding with someone yesterday who was recounting a couple stories where he went to the hardware store, and he was being yelled at for wearing a mask. So what's that about? And if we can all remember that there's a common there as well, maybe for different reasons, it helps us really align and realize that we're coming from the same place, and we're not so different after all. So the other piece around it is to really think about this time. Hopefully, if it hasn't happened already, maybe it'll happen over the next few months. I'd like you to, in a proactive way, begin to notice your own internal narratives. What are the stories you're telling yourself? What are the phrases that are coming up? Sometimes it's easiest to notice them when you're really upset, like afterwards, like if someone cuts you off while driving and you start yelling out loud to that person who can't hear you, you clearly can observe your narrative. And to the more subtle stuff that you may notice when you wake up in the morning, which may be, oh my God, it's a beautiful day, or maybe, oh my God, here's another day. Just to start to pay attention, because that'll help sort of drive your own interactions. And the reason why it's particularly relevant now is a couple things. One is this is an opportunity to recreate how you live your life. I mean, there's a lot up for grabs right now. People are rethinking everything. Rethinking, how do you conduct business? Do people have to come to the office? Do you have to travel to New York for that meeting? Do you need to sort of interact daily with your colleague or supervisor in the workplace? There's at every level, things are being sort of re-examined, and similarly around education. So can you do education remotely? My kids are teenagers. Are they going to take the SAT online? Is that going to be allowed? Certain colleges like Cornell, for example, is making the SAT optional, and in certain cases, they're not going to accept an online, remote, proctored SAT. So everything's being reevaluated, which gives us the opportunity to reevaluate how we live our own life. And so I'd like you to begin to sort of think about, do I love what I'm doing? Do I love how do I spend my time? How do I sort of walk through the world? What are my normal reactions? What are my normal habits? Maybe it's time to change them. Maybe we have more time to sort of experiment and run different experiments for ourselves. So it's a time where we can, as Governor Cuomo said a while ago, he said, let's think about not just returning back to work or returning back to our life, but reimagining what's possible so we can do things different. We can do things better. We can evolve. And if we can use that as our mantra and as our centering place, then the fear will move towards the background. Then the fear becomes one of, this is an opportunity for creativity and to reimagine what's possible. And Lord knows we in America love creating what's possible in innovation. And so this is an opportunity for that. And so I welcome you to sort of really reflect on that. I'll tell you a little story. So I was reflecting on the sort of the current scenarios that are out there. And the example of the three little pigs came to mind. So, the story of the three little pigs. You've got the youngest piglet, the middle piglet, and the elder piglet, right? And mom sends them off to go sort of out on their own to venture and make, so their own vision quest, basically, right? Their own rite of passage. And the little piglet builds his house from straw, right? And it's the quickest, it's the easiest, it's done, right? And the elder piglet is like, "What? Don't do it that way." And he's like, "No, this gives me the most time to play. I want to put my straw house up and I'm done." And the middle piglet sort of took in a little bit of the elder piglet's information. So he took it from branches, right? He went to the woods, grabbed some branches and built hills. It took him about 3 days. But the eldest piglet took him an entire week, right? It was built from mortar and brick, stone. And what happened? The wolf came through and blew the house down out of the straw, blew the house down out of the middle piglet. Those little guys huddled into the eldest home and he couldn't blow the house down. But then what happened? The wolf was really hungry by then, right? And he looked up and he saw a chimney and said, I can go through that chimney. He found a vulnerability. And so looked for that vulnerability and went for it and came inside. And unfortunately for the wolf, fortunately for the piglets, the eldest pig created a big cauldron of boiling water and he fell in and the poor wolf died. But the piglets were saved. So what's the lesson there, right? So, a lot of times, the classic sort of moral of the stories, you need to work hard and you'll become successful. You got to put in the time and the effort and you get success. I think in sort of the moral and the time sort of after COVID experience, which we're sort of walking into, even though there's been more cases documented today than in the history of this pandemic globally, but that's for another conversation. But as we transition in is, how do we build a home that provides shelter from both the elements, meaning the virus, and our own financial situation? So in other words, building this shelter so we're so hunkered in that we never leave our home. and that we can't get our own food. We won't go to the grocery store. We won't do anything because we're so afraid of the virus, right, of these elements, that we then suffer and or die, right? You should take an extreme case. But similarly, then you can't go to work, you can't make money. And on the flip side is the opposite. How do we do it on the flip side? Where you're so brazen about it that you're going to go back to work and you don't need to wear masks and we can just go full force back into it, that then you get sick. So they're both extremes of the same conversation. And in my mind, it's really about what I'm calling the intelligent design. How do you come through with some intelligence, which brings in really sort of mindfulness, being present to notice how you interact, and being able to do it through intelligent design. And if you think through, like, what are the emotions? There's fear in both scenarios. Like I said from the beginning, you have the fear of COVID or the fear of financial ruin. And can we get to a place of equanimity? Can we get to a place where we're able to sort of notice our emotions and then come back to a feeling of centeredness? Because on one hand is I may die of the virus, and on the other hand is I may lose everything financially. And how can we then go to, well, let's design a new way. Let's move through this sort of in a new way. So with that in mind, I want to give you some basic knowledge that'll help sort of give you the foundation to be knowledgeable and mindful and interacting, like, as we move into the next phase. And the reason I bring it up is I can't tell you how many stories I hear of, someone goes to the grocery store and the manager of the grocery store is doing the checkout. This is a real story. And he's got a mask, and the mask is sort of fallen down. So it's, it's half on and half not on. And, it's sort of, was like this, and now it's sort of like this, or it's sort of like this. And the guy's like trying to push it up, and then he's touching your food and moving it down, and then he's trying to put it up again, right? And you're just like getting more and more anxious, right? And in that scenario, what's the option? Do you go complain and get him fired? Not great. Those guys are doing the best they can. Can you sort of pull him aside and educate him? What's the best tact? And in those scenarios, it's, what's the problem there? Well, his nose is exposed, and also he keeps touching the mask and then touching your items. And honestly, what's going to happen? He's more likely to infect himself by touching everything, touching his mask, and then probably rubbing his face and putting things up. That's the biggest concern. And then he'll potentially affect who he lives with, etc. So I want to walk through a few scenarios. So let's start with just masks in general. What's the best mask to wear? So this is open to debate. But if looking through some of the research that I've there's these systematic reviews we've looked at in a range of different studies. There's one study that showed that they sort of compared N95 masks, those respirator masks that we use in the healthcare setting, with surgical masks. And they did a huge study, about 2,000 people were in it, over 13 centers. It was over the United States. They followed them over 4 years. This is for influenza. They actually found, amongst healthcare workers, they found no difference in the infection rates if you wore a surgical mask or an N95. For the people in the outpatient setting. So primary care doctor, or cardiology doc, and, you come into the visit room for influenza. This is different than if I'm doing procedures on you in the hospital. So that was interesting. So, okay, surgical masks, medical masks are actually they work pretty well. Then there's another study and a few others that have looked at what's the difference between these surgical masks and a cloth mask made from a t-shirt, for example. And they looked at a few different masks. They looked at masks made from vacuum cleaner filters, those vacuum, when you take your vacuum and they have the filter back, right? And that's heavily woven and thick. And that was actually pretty effective, almost as effective as a surgical mask. But the filtration, what they call the pressure drop across is so high, meaning it's so hard to breathe across the thing that no one would wear them. So, and then they looked at what they call tea towels and a few other which are heavily woven. Turned out the best and most wearable and practical were these cotton masks, and they compared them against no mask or surgical mask. So good news and bad news. The surgical masks were clearly better. And how much better were they? So if they really were about 2 times better. So you had about twofold better with respect to the seal, which is the ability for it to seal across your face, over the nose, around the mouth, and under the chin. You want that, they call it a fit test. They're 2 times better having a surgical mask. So it's real important if you're making your own masks or buying these, that they really fit you well. They need to have some elasticity to them so that they can contour to your face, or you can design them to your face, or maybe they have a little metal in them that can contour to your nose and things like that. The second part of the conversation is how much of this, in this case, they examined the bacteria count, was coming out when you coughed in this scenario. And it turned out they were 3-fold more bacteria coming out with this plain old cotton mask than a surgical mask. So clearly, surgical masks are way better. But those cotton masks were better than nothing. So my advice is, if you can get surgical masks, I would advise surgical masks. Now, there's a supply chain issue around surgical masks, but they're not nearly as bad as the N95 masks. So my advice is surgical masks are better. And then we're going to move into where and why in a moment. So that is sort of, I hope, helpful to you in thinking about if you're going to wear these cotton masks. Some people are putting coffee filters in the front of them, which are probably better. I haven't seen any studies on it yet. But that, make sure that the seal is really good and make sure they're comfortable. So when and where do we care about these? So the way they examined it was through coughing. So let's just talk about these different scenarios: sneezing, coughing, speaking, breathing, singing. Do they all matter? What's the difference? So sneezing is like high projectile, super fast, maybe 200 miles an hour projectiles coming at you. So that there's huge load and often is, abrupt. Coughing is also really quick and a high number of viruses coming out as well at high velocity. So in those scenarios, ideally someone's wearing a mask and they're covering on top of it, right? So you're really trying to protect yourself so that you protect others. When it comes to like singing, again, there's higher velocity. And then I'll talk about environments in a moment. And then speaking, and then breathing. So if you're going to sort of there's basically a logarithmic difference between sneezing and coughing is its own category from people speaking and breathing, with respect to the number of viruses that come out, particles, and sort of the velocity it's coming at you. So, and how far it can project across the room. So then the way to think a bit more about this is, what more do I need to think about? So how many virus particles are in the air? And the other part is, how close am I to that person or to those particles? And then how much time am I spending there? So if I'm spending all day in the grocery store, or am I spending an hour in the grocery store? Am I spending, all day in the office? Or am I spending an hour in the office? Am I spending all day outside? And so that's the environment combined with duration, combined with exposure, is really our infectious risk. And the vast majority of these infections seem to be coming from environments where it's enclosed, inside, lots of people for a long period of time with bad ventilation. So that's the recipe for disaster. So if you think about nursing homes, if you think about prisons, if you think about workplaces where that are very, like meat factories as an example, where they're working tightly together, that's that scenario. Poor ventilation, they're close to each other, and they're there for a long period of time. So even when you're wearing a mask, it's coming through. So, so the other piece of the equation now is, how do you manage? So the other scenarios, let's put those aside for a moment and move into these situations that are more social. So I want to go to my friend's house. How do I do that? What does that look like? And I just want to invite you to just think about, we're going to do things different. Don't go back to your old ways. We have to do things different. So this is the new version of how you're hanging out with your friends. We sort of have to modify it for now. And that modification is, number one, choose very selectively who you want to hang out with. So understand what their social interactions have been. Are they carefree about it and they sort of let their hands off with their kids and in themselves and the ones they interact with, or are they a bit more vigilant? And then just widen the circle a bit. So allow 1 or 2 or 3 groups into that web. And then how do you then interact? So that's number one, is I wouldn't just go full out and throw a party of 50 people. You really want to sort of slowly open the web out. The second part is, ideally, outdoors is clearly better than indoors. When winter comes, outdoors will be more difficult, and so we're going to need to modify. When you are indoors, you want windows open. You want them on opposing sides of a building open, so that you create a cross current to increase ventilation and reduce particle accumulation of these viruses. In addition, you can have fans or you can have HEPA filters. So that cross ventilation, and obviously if you can improve the HVAC system in the building, in the office place, or in your home, even better. But this is sort of the poor man immediate things you can do, which is improve ventilation by opening windows and HEPA filters. And then of course wearing masks. Now, it's a little odd to be wearing masks when you're inside amongst friends, but that's sort of the new reality, particularly if you're in a vulnerable population. The other piece to really give some thought to is you're going to the restaurant. Do you want to go to the restaurant? I'm going to go to the building. I got to use an elevator. I'm going to use the bathroom. I'm going to my friend's house and use the bathroom. So let's take the bathroom as an example. So there's Mother Nature. If you're living out and you have, outdoors, and that's an option, go use Mother Nature as your bathroom. Assuming that you don't want to do that and you want to be the host allows you to go in the bathroom. Again, ideally the doors are open so they don't have to touch doors. So ideally they're not touching a lot of doors. But then you need to get out of the bathroom, right? How are you going to open the door? So again, paper towels, using your own hand and covering it to open the door, and et cetera. So if you just be mindful about, I'm going to touch as little doors as I can. I'm going to open this door with my elbow. I'm going to come inside and close it with my elbow. I'm going to use the bathroom. I'm going to use soap, wash my hands thoroughly for 20 seconds or more. And then, open the door, open the bathroom again, then go wash your hands, right? And then leave the bathroom. So just being mindful will decrease the risk. And then of course, the person who's hosting then needs to wipe down the area with disinfectant at the end of that socializing. So those are the main pieces I wanted to sort of really touch on. Again, elevators, the same sort of thing with respect to the knobs that you're pushing. I'm wary of going to indoor restaurants, depending on the airflow in that restaurant, a certain part of or for example, or in the office buildings, it all depends on airflow, which we don't know when you walk into a restaurant, or you're more likely to have something get sucked in and travel down this corridor, etc. So I encourage you to be sitting outdoors if you're going to restaurants, is a far better scenario. When you're interacting with people that are sort of rambunctious about your interactions, my advice again is just to try and come back to your center and realize everyone has a lot of fear. There's a lot of unknown. It creates a lot of anxiety for all of us. And, we like to be able to sort of handle situations and know the outcome. And this isn't a noble outcome. This is a reminder of how little control we have really over our life in the first place. So it's a natural tendency to feel anxiety, and I invite you just to notice it and try and move maybe into your body as a nice way to get out of your mind and just check in with the body, and then which allows the mind to move a bit more towards the background and that whirling and thinking and that anxiety, and allows those emotions to then pass because they often are just fleeting, and then allows your sort of greater self and that core being to sort of come forward again and allow the rational thinking to come back. So this is going to happen a lot. don't be hard on yourself when it sort of keeps coming back and back and back, because it will. And I invite you sort of to use this as a teacher and as an opportunity to drop into yourself and sort of cultivate your own sense of centeredness. So I'd like to introduce Terica again, and I've invited her today to lead us through a meditation practice. She has a great curriculum and a methodology that she uses, and I would love for those that enjoy it and want to participate in the future with it, talk to myself or Donna or Julie, and I'm happy to make an introduction to Terica in the future. So Terica, if you don't mind, maybe spend 15 minutes or so and bring us into a good place and walk us through a meditation of your choosing. We appreciate you.
Sure, thank you. So I'll basically just build on what you shared. The meditation I'm going to guide is going to give you the experience of what it's like to move from a disturbed state emotionally or obsessive thinking, the worrying about the disease, getting the disease, or economic worries, to your center. And what DrBrad is referring to, that intelligent design where you can move from that place. So it's a very simple technique. Because it's guided, it's very easy for you to experience. So even if you've never meditated before, don't worry, you're guided along the whole journey. I was born into meditation, so it's my lifelong love and passion. It's what I do. I love to guide people. And this particular technique is a guided heart meditation. So I'm going to be guiding you into your heart center, also known as the heart chakra. And the beauty about the heart is that it has a natural ability to transform disturbances on the surface. So disturbances of mind, disturbances of emotions, and it expands your awareness beyond mind, like what DrBrad was referring to, that emotions are just waves, they're temporary, they pass quickly, and you're connected to that which is beyond mind. So don't worry if you get distracted by thoughts. It's natural. In your heart, there's space for that. Or if you're emotional in this moment, worried about the virus or how you're going to expand your web of people and who you're going to choose and whether you're going to make a mistake or not, that can all be included in the meditation. So I'm going to play some background music, and please make sure that your devices are off just for yourself, that you're not disturbed during the meditation. And find a comfortable position in which you feel supported and relaxed. There's really no specific way you need to meditate. Some techniques ask you to sit cross-legged, but this is not one of them. The most important is that you're relaxed and supported. And then allowing your eyes to close whenever you feel ready. And noticing how simply by closing the eyes, your attention naturally begins to turn inwards. So you might even feel the release of tension in the eyelids. Maybe they're fluttering as you close them. And allowing everything to settle. So as you close your eyes, you might even notice that your attention begins to soften and relax. And becoming aware of your body. The easiest way to come into the moment is by becoming aware of whatever you're experiencing. Beginning by feeling the support underneath you. behind you. And allowing yourself to relax into the support, to settle into the support. And you may notice different tensions in the body or places of holding. And if there are, gently breathing into those areas, taking deeper breaths than you normally would. And imagining the energy of the breath can flow to the tension, gently releasing the tension, softening the muscles. And you might even visualize the energy of the breath as light or a healing color. And as you breathe into different areas, feeling the tension release, feeling the body softening, relaxing. Taking deep, gentle breaths, finding your own rhythm of breathing. Feeling the breath as it enters the body, touching your lips, your nostrils as you breathe in. A gentle expansion in the chest, bringing in new energy, new life with the breath. And allowing the breath as you feel it, opening the chest, allowing it to open the energy of your heart. There's a natural synchronicity between the breath and the energy of the heart. So as you feel that physical sensation in the chest, feeling the warmth of your heart opening in this moment. And the beauty about the heart is that you can allow yourself to be exactly as you are. You can allow your thoughts, different body sensations, emotions, feeling how the heart gently embraces whatever you're experiencing. Each time you breathe in, there's an expansion, a lightness of being. Almost like the energy of the sun filling you from the inside, a gentle radiance, warmth from within. And you might even feel this expansion in your heart flowing to different parts of the body, bringing light, bringing love, bringing care to wherever it's needed, whatever is calling your attention right now. And then on the out breath, feeling the natural release, letting go. Each time you breathe out, there's a release of tension, release of worry, concern, which at this moment you don't need. And there may even be things that you intentionally want to release right now, things that are disturbing you in some way. If you like, you can mindfully release whatever it is. Each time you breathe out, you might even feel tensions releasing from the body or dissolving back into the earth. And each time you breathe out, you return back home to your center, a little deeper each time, connecting deeper inside, feeling more settled, more at peace, more relaxed. more connected, or whatever you're experiencing right now. And then receiving another gift of life with the in-breath, feeling the breath arising from the center, almost like a wave of energy arising from within, filling you with warmth, with light, awakening your natural sensitivity to feel more deeply in this moment, feeling your own nature. You might even be more aware of your surrounding, the sounds around you, sound of the music, my voice. All your senses opening like windows here now. And each time you breathe in, feeling your capacity to simply be present with whatever you're experiencing expand. It's almost like your heart gets stronger and stronger. It's like a gentle glow expanding beyond the physical body, almost like a protective aura around you and within and around you. And you might even be, as you feel your body and you expand your sensitivity of this moment, you might even become aware of different feelings that may be beneath the surface that you weren't fully aware of. If there is waves of fear, embracing that fear, uncertainty, anxiety, maybe it is anger or frustration, boredom. Or maybe you feel happy and content and joyous right now. Noticing how the heart welcomes unconditionally whatever you're experiencing without preference. It's a neutral quality of awareness. There's no good or bad or right or wrong. No pressure to be a certain way. Enjoying the relaxation and simply being exactly as you are right now. And noticing in this yes to yourself as you are, what's limited in you, what's disturbing, starts to relax, starts to dissolve, starts to loosening its grip. Maybe thoughts start to flow more freely, coming and going on their own. Maybe you feel lighter, emotionally, more free, clear. Noticing the mind becoming more clear, sharper, more intelligent, alert, simply by connecting to your center, to your inner being in this moment. Everything coming into balance, harmony. And remembering you can connect with your center in any moment. This space is always available to you in moments when you're at the grocery store and someone isn't wearing their mask properly, or you're uncertain about who to spend time with socially, or fearing your finances, whatever gets triggered in you in your life. Remember to come back again and again and again and again, back home to your center, to the source of your intelligence, as you are right now. And then starting to bring a little bit of movement and energy back into the body whenever you feel ready in a way that feels good to you. Might be through taking deeper breaths, maybe wiggling the fingers, the toes, maybe even stretching the body in a way that feels good to you. Allowing the eyes to open whenever you feel ready, taking your time. And I'll give it back to you, DrBrad.
Thank you, Terica. That was great. So refreshing.
Yeah.
So I wanted to I invite you guys just to take a moment and check in to feel how your body is feeling, and maybe there's a single word, a sort of a felt sense that you have right now, and just to document that in your mind. Maybe write it down if you happen to be near a piece of paper, just as a moment of checking in and see what comes up. A lot of times we can have the most insight just on the back side of a meditation. Stuff sort of rises. And it's often almost like the dreamlike state, where there's a lot of material that you have access to. So I invite you to explore that. So I wanted to get a little bit, before we get too much feedback on the sort of intellectual side of the conversation. I invite you, if you're interested in doing more of this work. I know Terica has a app called, is it called Love Garden Meditations? Is that right?
Yeah, Love Garden Meditations. It's on Google Play and the App Store. Love Garden is one word, make sure.
Yeah. So I invite you, if you're interested, to explore that. She has some beautiful, really beautiful music, along with a beautiful voice that really can drop you right in. So I appreciate that about you, Terica. The other thing I want to just remind you, a lot of people have said to me, you know, I suck at meditation. I can't do it right. I can never clear my head. I just get agitated. It reminds me how bad I am at it. And I'd like to remind you that the whole point of meditating is to become aware of our automaticities, of our sort of things that we do subconsciously or unconsciously, and just to notice them. Like how wonderful is a whole world in there that you didn't even know was running in parallel processing. While you're talking, there's these conversations going on even while you're speaking sometimes. So the intention behind meditation is the awareness. And it's a beautiful thing to be aware of the fact that you are thinking and that it doesn't stop. And so that you could start to separate you from your thinking mind or your emotions, because by you noticing whatever it is you're noticing, you are now separate from it, whatever it is, your emotions, your thoughts. And that in itself unties the enmeshment that we think we are our thoughts, we are our emotions. And it gives us the ability to actually have choice and to choose to continue to engage with that emotion rather than be that emotion, or to let it go. And so the exercise is one that just happens over and over again, which is, oh, I'm noticing I'm thinking. There's a moment maybe of just pause, and then next thing you know, you're thinking again, until you notice, oh, I was thinking again, or I was having this emotional, feeling yucky or feeling angry. And then, and it goes on, and that's the journey. So don't be hard on yourself. I think I was mentioning with Terika, Pema Chodron likes to speak to this, and she's a wonderful contemplative master meditation practitioner who's been doing it for 40 years. And she said, I still have things running all day long in my head, even in my meditation practice, and I'm a monk. So it's just the way it goes. And it's be okay with that. So I invite you to be okay with that. Don't get frustrated. Someone asked a question about flying in airplanes. So I wanted to speak to that. It's really unknown how bad it is to fly in airplanes. And there's, data coming out, and I welcome Mary or Bernadette, who may have seen some of it come across. Some of the studies that have started to look at it for SARS and for influenza has said that it's better to basically be out of circulation. So the highest risk is really around the perimeter of someone's sick, they're on the plane, they're coughing, sneezing, speaking. And that perimeter that tends to be a row behind them or in a row in front of them is an area of concern. The further out you go, of course, the safer it is. The other is just being further away from circulation. So window seats, I love aisle seats, but they say don't be in the aisle seat because everyone's passing by. And everyone touches the tops of the seats as they're walking to keep their balance, right? So window seats tend to be away from the bathrooms because people stand and linger in the bathrooms. And of course, those that are more sick may go to the bathrooms more frequently if they have a GI issue, for example, which is possible with COVID. But so, towards the middle of the plane, in the window, I would wear a surgical mask. I would wear gloves. I would bring disinfectant, and I would, just do the best you can, disinfect the area you're in, go to the bathroom, and sort of, again, the same principles we were talking about in someone's home. On the way back, you may need to touch people's seats because, you got to get back and not fall down. And then you get back in your seat, hopefully have some disinfectant. You can just wash your hands, that's how I would play it. We'll get more data on it as we know, but that's as much as I know. I don't know if anyone else has any other insights. Okay. So there's another question here about CPAP and BiPAP machines and flying. If I use my CPAP or BiPAP the whole time, will that, and it with the filter, I guess, protect you? No. So that should not. First of all, I'm not sure how you would set that up on an airplane. I don't even know if you're allowed to bring a CPAP machine on a plane. And the filtering system you want, ideally, is really a surgical mask would be fine. And, it's unclear how people get it. Mary and I have a colleague who's recovering now who was flying. He thinks he got it from flying, and he did all the right things. And he's guessing that he got it through his eyes, but who knows how he got it, right? And it's, you just don't know. So the ideal situation is that at a global level or whatever areas you're flying in and out of, it's that the pandemic's more quiet in those zones. Of course, people fly from one airport to another, but just trying to sort of be logical about it is just to reduce your risk. So in general, reduce your risk. If you don't have to fly, don't. If you need to fly, shorter distance is better. Reduced frequency is better. Like all these steps put barriers in place to sort of reduce your risk. If you can drive there, drive there. Would be sort of my recommendation. Any other thoughts or from any of the other panelists around anything we've covered?
I just wanted to add that in addition to the planes, it's just going through the airports, not people, but just the luggage handling and all that jazz. It's pretty tricky too when you travel, because they're handled a lot by people working at the airports. So I've known a couple of people who think that they've gotten contagion through that more than anything else. So that's something to be aware of as well.
Yeah.
And to add to that, the other aspect is transportation to and from airports. Some people will get into an Uber or taxi for up to an hour to get to the airport, and that can be challenging. I also wanted to add, Brad, I don't know if you mentioned this on a prior webinar, for anyone who is attempting to get an N95 respirator, there are a lot of entities out there that are selling fraudulent N95s. The CDC has a great link in their website that tells you how to decipher a real N95 product versus that of one that is fake. And they also offer a link to confirming that the NIOSH approved number that should be listed on any N95 product is authentic. So you can go into the CDC site, enter that number, and confirm that the mask you're purchasing, the respirator mask you're purchasing, is authentic N95. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
If someone wants to get that.
Yeah, that's a huge issue. And as I've mentioned before, we've started a nonprofit called Humankind Now, focused on getting people PPE. And so we've been deeply embedded in this whole procurement process for N95s. And the amount of corruption is huge coming out of China, and with fraudulent, equipment, particularly N95s. I don't think that we as a general public need to be wearing N95s. So I would not encourage it. I think surgical masks are so much more comfortable. And what happens with these N95s is they're truly uncomfortable. No one likes to wear them. If you talk to any doctor that wears them and fits them correctly, they're super uncomfortable. You can wear them for a little while, but they're hard to breathe through. They're really tight on your face. Most people that wear them don't fit them right anyway, because they've never worn them before. And a lot of people may self-inoculate because they're always touching it because it is uncomfortable. And you're getting a fraudulent one, so who knows the quality of that one is the risk also. And so you have this false sense of security. And if, literally states, cities, hospitals have all been fooled. And only when they did fit testing, it's called, did they find out these things were actually bad. And then they've lost millions of dollars across the country because of this issue. So even these guys that do this for a living have been fooled and only figured it out through formal, what they call fit testing. So yeah, I would just go for surgical masks would be my approach. And then and Bernita, you bring up a really good point about traveling through airports. So if you can avoid them, I would. And if you can't, just take the precautions you need to do. The other piece is testing. So, is to get yourself tested is becoming easier and easier to do that. There's now a saliva test out by a company called, by Rutgers Clinical Genomic Labs. and they partnered with a few direct-to-consumer and business-to-business companies. One of the ones I'm working with is a company called Vault Health, and they're providing the saliva testing. So, you know, there's that piece too, which is we can test ourselves, which, you know, might be helpful. For example, kids going to camp, you know, so my kid's going to camp. Certain states are closing camps. The state my kid wants to go to school isn't closing their camp in New Hampshire, but they're doing all the right protocols in place, which is they're going to require temperature testing before they show up. They're actually going to ask campers to test themselves. You know, they're going to have the kids dropped off, and the parents aren't allowed to walk in. They're not going to let lots of guest visitors come to the camp. You know, there's all these steps in place to sort of set it up so that it's as safe as it can be as well. So meditate daily if you can. So drop in and find a place, even if it's for a minute, just to check in with yourself and just to see where things are and how things are feeling. I encourage you to reimagine what's possible for yourself. It's an opportunity to recreate yourself, personally, professionally, however you want to play it. And thanks for your time today. So thank all of you panelists for joining.
Thank you.
All right. Take good care.
Thank
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.